Excellencies, esteemed guests, good morning. We live in an age of shifting alliances, emerging powers, and global disruptions. The geopolitical chessboard is being redrawn not only by states, but also by non-state actors. Technological revolutions and transnational crises, from climate change to cyber threats. The old rules of engagement are eroding, predictability is fading, and stability is no longer guaranteed. It's against this backdrop that we welcome you to today's session titled Moving the Chess Pawns, Rebalancing Power in a New World. I'm Obaid Zaabi, the Sector Director for Strategic Studies and Research at the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, and it's my honor to moderate this session with our distinguished speakers. In this session, we'll explore a pressing question: who is moving the pawns and who's becoming one? We will look at how influence is being wielded, contested, and redistributed across today's fractured world order. We are privileged to have with us a distinguished panel of speakers. We have Mr. Isaacson, Chief Policy and Political Affairs Officer in American Jewish Committee from the USA. And we have Professor Murhaf, Jouejati, founder and CEO of SyriaConsult and former distinguished visiting professor of Middle East Studies and Global Affairs at US Naval Academy from USA. And Professor Mohamed bin Huwaidin, Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences in the United Arab Emirates University in the UAE. And Professor Wang, Zhen, Deputy Director at the Institute for International Relations at Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences in China. As for the format of our discussion, I will begin by posing a few questions to our panelists, and then we will open the floor for audience participation. The questions by the audience can be submitted digitally through the QR code on the screens. It will appear during our discussion. So for our audience, you will a QR code gonna appear on the screen on both screens. Please, when you scan the QR code, select the title of this session, Moving the Chess Pawn, when submitting your questions. With that, let us begin our conversation. Welcome to you all, my guest speakers. I would like to start our conversation, and as I said, it's going to be like more as a conversation than like given lectures or statements by the speakers, so it's going to be more dynamic. My first question to all of you, and I will give like 2 to 3 minutes for each of you to speak about this. The global chessboard is in flux. Who's moving the pawns and who risks becoming one? This is the first question. And the second one, are we living in a multipolar world, still a unipolar one, or sliding into something more dangerous, what's called a polar order? So the floor is yours. We can start with you, Mr. Jason.
Thank you, Obaid. It's very good to be here, and it's such a pleasure to be in a forum hosted by the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research and the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy, which my organization has been so proud to partner with in the past. It's good to see you again. It's hard to justify a response that says that we're now simply a unipolar world, as we have been essentially for the last 60 or 70 or so years. Clearly, it's moving in the direction of more multipolar. I don't quite understand the possibility of an apolar world. I think we're really in a transition phase. I think that American dominance, American ability to project force, America's forward deployments, its alliances, have maintained a particular international order, an order that is now eroding as the United States is pulling back from certain alliances, is threatening a whole range of international norms. But I think the United States is still dominant, but for how much longer we can expect that position, I can't predict. I'm concerned about the failure of our current government to maintain the same network of hugely important alliances that have maintained America's ability to not only project force, but project influence and be a moral standard. I'm very concerned. I hope we'll go back to where we have been in the past. We're not quite there now.
So you're saying that we are in a transitional phase. Let's describe it like this. Saying that, Professor Mohamed, what's your intake about it? Like what Mr. Jason said and answering the questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Obaid. I'm very delighted to be here sharing my perspective with such a distinguished intellectuals. When it comes to the issues of the international system, there is ongoing debates happening in international relations among the scholars about these issues. There is a general consensus that international systems, for a state to be a pole in the international system, it has to require certain capabilities. And there are 7 very important capabilities or components of what make a state a pole. Military for sure, this is number 1. Economic is absolutely so important, but nowadays technology is so important as well. Technology is driving competitive forces nowadays in every aspect, political, economic, and militarily. And also there is also a clearance of security independence. A pole has to be independent security, meaning that it should not be dependent on others. For security and for defense. There is also the ability to shape the international structure and norms and alliances, and also attractiveness. A state must be attracted to be attractive to others. And the last point, which is very important, how the state envisions itself in the international system. These 7 components are very important to for us as scholars of international relations to define whether the international system is a unipolar, multipolar, apolar, or bipolar. To me, after looking at all these aspects, the 7 capabilities, I am very confident that the international system today is a bipolar. An international system that dominated by 2 powers that has the predominant capabilities that no other has, the United States and China. The United States and China are really what we call in the foresight studies, they are the mega trend. Others rising powers like India, Brazil, South Africa, Russia, they are the trends in the international system. The mega trends are very important. The mega trends, the trends that are actually states that making and shaping the international system for a very long time and creating a transformative change and making a huge change for global level. Trends like Russia and others, they are making change, but unfortunately this change is very limited in scope, and it's not global, and it's not for a very long period of time. So in my view, there is no challenge that the current international system is led by the United States and China as the 2 most powerful countries that they're really moving the pawns within the system.
Okay, just commenting on what you have said, Professor, but as we know, and Professor Wang can elaborate more on that, that China had declared many times it's not seeking to lead the world, like to be a dominant power in the world. So still, how comes like China itself says that we are not seeking to be like a hegemonic power, and you are saying that it's a unipolar system? So
yes. In my view of the Chinese politics, China is rejuvenating itself as a global power, no longer a regional power. And this is part of the Chinese policy now, the rejuvenations, making China great again, as it used to be in the past, as a global power. So in my understanding and my study of Chinese politics, China is, yes, it does not want to look like America dominating the sphere of the international system, but it wants to tell the world that I am a main player in the international system, and it should be considered as equal as the United States in the international system. So yes, it is playing a role, whether it say it or it does not say it.
Without bragging.
Without bragging. Thank you, Jason.
Professor,
yes.
and the Mufti.
Thank you. It's a very important point because as we have heard in the last decade, there's more and more discussions on the unipolar or bipolar or the multipolar. A lot of discussion of that. But I think when we talk about the multipolar or bipolar, we have to keep in mind that is such kind of descriptions or concept has different meanings. It can be a kind of a reality. It can be a kind of preoccupied perceptions, or it can be a kind of analytical framework for us to better understand the world. And for me, my personal understanding is that when we talk about the bipolar or unipolar world, it has two dimensions or levels. The first is about the polarity, how to define the polarity, or who can be the polarity. Or we can see that the balance of the power structure among the major powers. But another question is also very important. That is, what is the governance under such kind of the balance, power balance. I think this is more important. People concerned about that. When you say about the bipolar system, I know many people now believe that China perhaps will be another polarity. Because I do agree that from the hard powers, China do have the potentiality to be another polarities. From economy, from military expenditures. The last year, United States, the military deficit budget is about 996 billion US dollars, while China is about 296 billion US dollars. Less than 1/3 of the United States, but bigger than the other countries. Well, but I think such kind of assessment is only based on the hard powers. It's incomplete because you have to know that United States has much influence of the global institutions, and the United States has a lot of aligned systems, military based worldwide. Well, China up to now, China still continue to the non-interference, no aligned policy. So on the second level, as I mentioned, for the global governance, even I think China has capabilities of the hard power to be polarities, but I think on the global governance or the international governance, I think China will continue to keep or to insist the multipolar system. This is not just from rhetoric or from the leaders' speech. It was from the deeply rooted of its culture and its philosophies and history, something like that. Because China was suffered a lot from the semi-colonial history, so it cannot be imagined that China's elite will support a more aggressive globally. And also, I remember that China leaders, our President Xi Jinping, mentioned in 2023. I translate in the quote here. He said that we advocate equal and orderly multipolar world and an inclusive economic globalization. And it has a special definition that an equal and orderly multipolar world means upholding the equality of all countries, whether they're big or small, opposing hegemony and power politics, and effectively promoting the democratizations of the international politics. So I think on the global governance or regional governance, China will continue to insist the multipolar structure for corporations, something like that. Something about it.
Professor Murhaf, your intakes? And I will go back again to Professor Wang after you. Yes.
Is this on? I don't think it's on. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to thank very much the organizers of this very important conference. I'm honored to be here. In my profile, you may have seen the U.S. Naval Academy. I retired from it, but I need to say that the views that I will have here represent only myself and of nobody else. I think we are going through a historic shift from the Cold War as regional powers and non-state actors assert themselves. regional powers seek to replace the balance. We went from bipolar to unipolar, and now we don't know exactly where we are. And I don't want to call it multipolar, because multipolarity suggests that there is a cohesive group of countries that have global influence over issue areas, and that is not the case. What I would rather say is that it is apolarity, or even more accurately, a polycentric order. A polycentric order, which is disorder. What we have today is disorder. Unipolarity in terms of power, and here I listened to the previous sessions, they're absolutely right. The old assumption was that power was measured by the military, by GDP. These assumptions are gone. The new assumption, I think, is that those who have control over energy, supply chains, information, they define influence. And the United States, and you are right, Professor, the United States spent on its military the combination of the second 7 countries, and is the largest economy in the world, but its influence is on the wane. And its influence is on the wane as a result not only of its overreach with all its bases around the world, and here I am reminded of the author Paul Kennedy, who writes about the rise and the fall of great powers, that the superpower, in order to protect its investments, overreaches in the military and then begins to wane as a result. And I think that is the case of the United States. Before this actual government, I think this waning of US influence in the world has begun in the 1990s and the 2000s. But certainly this government has accentuated this waning. So all this to say, I don't think it's unipolar anymore. I don't think it is bipolar. I don't think it's even multipolar. I would say it is a polycentric order, which is disorder that we are living in now.
Thank you, Professor Murhaf. Go. Yeah, sure.
Very interesting. If I may respond. I'm a proud American. I'm a patriot. You'll forgive me. But there is still an attractiveness to America that cannot be denied internationally. It's a cultural phenomenon, which is powerful. I fear that we're in danger of losing that. But it's not just our GDP, and it's not just our military power. There is a desire to be with America, to be accepted by, engaged with America, that I've seen everywhere in the world. And I don't think that's so easily lost. We are in danger of squandering that, but I believe that it still maintains America's supreme position in very significant ways.
Just commenting on what you have said, Mr. Jason. We heard Mr. Donald Trump, like a few days ago, he talked about losing India and Russia to China.
Sure.
So, and also we know that his his movement, MEGA, let's make America great again. So does this say that America is not great, so that we need to bring it great again, or what's your comment on that?
I think America is and was great. I don't think that we lost our greatness. I'm afraid that we're squandering our greatness in ways that I described earlier, and the relinquishing of soft power by the United States is a source of enormous concern. Our slashing of our international assistance programs, our foreign aid, our withdrawal from the World Health Organization, our withdrawal from UNESCO, shuttering of Voice of America and Radio Free Liberty and Radio Farda and Al Hura TV, all of these different ways that the United States has projected its image and its values and its engagement in international affairs, we're now cutting off some of those important access points that has provided the United States connections with people around the world, especially developing world. So I'm very concerned about that. And I think the example of that you just cited about India, when we are driving India away, having spent the last 20 years drawing India closer, is a perfect example of that.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you. Professor Murhaf, you were about to say something.
I wanted to respond. Without any doubt, there's a lot of attractive things about the United States. People from all over the world, they want to flock to the United States. They want U.S. visas. They want their children to study in U.S. universities. There is no doubt that there is a lot of greatness about the United States. But take, for example, the BRICS, who have made a new bank, who are discussing to have another currency other than the US dollar. Is that not the waning of US influence? Take the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Again, a new bank that has invested $85 billion in southern states. Take the South-South solidarity. Take the fact that India and Brazil now push in order to have permanent member status in the Security Council. All these things tell us that the United States is no longer the great unipolar superpower, as it has lost influence here and there, despite the fact that it's a very attractive country, so much so that I became a US citizen. So I don't want to take away from that, but I don't think there is denying that there is now a South-South solidarity that is chipping away not only at US influence and power, but at Western dominance.
Thank you. Yeah, sure, Professor.
Very simple. In this kind of discussions, once Americans see Chinese is the real rival, okay? And again, you see the rise of BRICS and the Shanghai cooperations and the banks and other things. This is a clear evidence that the system is going into two ways only, United States and China. Imagine, BRICS, this is great inventions. Imagine if it's not China. Wouldn't there be BRICS? Absolutely not. Shanghai cooperation organizations, if it wasn't for China, there won't be a Shanghai cooperation. And this giant is really going to constitute a pole in the international system challenging the United States. So in my view, the mega trends in the world is China, and China is going to lead along with the United States in the world. So we are definitely going to a two bipolar international system, not a multipolarity. Russia cannot play this role. India cannot play this role. Neither any other countries. If there is a multipolarity, I would call it uneven multipolarity. Uneven. There is two giants. Others uneven power are trying to middle here and there. But the international system, in my opinion, is not a pole, a disorder, or not a multipolar. It is definitely going to be a bipolar international system.
Thank you, Professor, because you brought a question to my mind that I can direct to Mr. Professor Wang. Professor Wang, we see that China presents itself as the architect of a more equitable multipolar world. But many outside observers, Professor Mohamed bin Huwaidin, one of them, of course, based on what he has said, see the elements of hierarchy in its initiatives, the BRICS and the Belt and Road Initiative, like etc. So the question is China trying to balance the system, really, as you said before, like, and create a multipolar system, or to redesign it around its own vision of order, as maybe Professor Mohamed said it, but in different way? Yes.
Cheers. Thank you. It's a very good question. Continue on the follow-up. Other panelists' presentation. I think this very important questions. Well, when we talk about whether the United States lose India or Russia or China get India or Russia, I think it's it's a kind of view from the great power competitions. But I have to say this concept was created or was first used by United States unilaterally. It's not from China. So in China, a few people, a government would like to use such kind of words. Actually, our policy is always the same because whether India or Russia, they are our neighbors, many years. So our policy is always the same, never change. Actually, our policy to the United States was also not changed. Just give you one example, because the BRI, I think you know that the BRI give you one example. In the 2015, I was in DC as a visiting fellow there. Now people are talking about the AIIB. Well, there's a lot of discussions. Well, the AIIB at the beginnings, we invite the United States and India join with us. But the United States, with the Obama administration, has no position for that. But later, United States give up. And India is the same thing. So why I say that? Because, I mean, our policy for United States and India and Russia is always the same. So we would prefer to see the world as a kind of a win-win cooperation, not from the great power competitions or rivalry, something like that. Well, it was the United States unilaterally redefined the China-U.S. relations from Trump, first terms of the Trump administration of that. And it's also about why we, I see that the world is entering a multipolar world. I said because two reasons. First, that in the last decade, we have seen that a lot of emerging countries growing developing very quickly. So the power structure, the balance of the power structure is changing very fast. So will be reflected on the global politics. Another reason, very important, as other panelists already mentioned, is that the United States gave up its leadership in many domains, climate change and the international trade in many ways. So which left a huge vacuum for other countries has to do it, whether in a global way or in the regional way. SCU and the BRICS is a kind of, for the emerging countries, help themselves cooperate together to, fill the gap of the regional governance deficit.
Thank you. Coming back to you, Professor Mohamed, and I will take it to another arena, let's say maybe on the Middle East level. How should not only Middle East, like even the middle power, what we call middle powers, how should middle and rising powers, whether in Asia, Middle East, Africa, or even the GCC countries, navigate this US-China competition without becoming like the pawns themselves of the chessboard?
You see, we are in a very, very sensitive environment where all states need to be very careful when they're dealing with each other, particularly in this rivalry between the United States and China. All countries need to be careful when they come to this, because we don't know. We really live in uncertainty. Uncertainty takes us to different paths, not one path. So we don't know where we're going exactly with this kind of rivalry. Are we going into a conflict, for example, like what happened in many example in the past, or are we going to accommodate this rivalry and changes in the international system, or are we going into a process of keep managing what is happening? Seems like we are in this process of managing things nowadays. But management or managing things is very, very dangerous thing, because it keeps us within the uncertainty. We don't know where we are heading to. Now, in this kind of a structure of international system where uncertainty is the most dominant, most other states other than China and the United States, they need to maneuver very carefully within this kind of environment. So the small state, middle power states, and many other states needs to be very careful in a way dealing with the United States and China, in a way reflect their interest. So the best way for them to do or to manage this kind of rivalry is to be more balanced. And not to go with one side against the others. So balancing relationship with these two giants are very important. This will require a very delicate, very smart diplomacy, but this is what they have to do to go through. A very smart, very delicate, very careful diplomacy in order to protect their interest within this rivalry between the two giants. So to be balanced, to be neutral, to emphasize the importance of state sovereignty, emphasize the importance of collaboration within the international system, try to play a role in pushing the two countries or many other countries towards solving the problems of international system. So this is the most, I think, the safer way for small countries and middle power countries in terms of dealing with the current international system of rivalry between these two giants.
Thank you. Professor.
I want to point out some significant differences between this East and West bipolar systems that we're talking about. With great respect for China, the fact that China, as allying itself with Russia, which is conducting a war of aggression, horrendous war of aggression against Ukraine for the last 3+ years, with Iran, which has developed a nuclear program that we've been hearing about all morning, and which threatens the region and threatens global security. I believe that middle powers are wise to, as Professor Mohamed was saying, balance, this delicate balance of relations between the East and the West. Clearly an important economic relationship that exists between China and this country and other countries in this region, without question. But keep in mind the danger of a security partnership with a power that is aligned with the kind of aggression that we are seeing in Ukraine, the kind of threats to global security that we're seeing in Iran. I think it's just an important lesson for people to keep in mind in middle power policy making.
Totally agree. And so after hearing what all of you have said, I came to a conclusion, and this is the middle of our conversation, not the end of our conversation, that we have a transnational phase, and we have a unipolar system or bipolar system, and a multipolar system and polycentric system. This will take me back to the main question, one of the main questions, which is moving the chess pawns within these systems. In your opinion, like, who are the pawns and who are the moving those pawns? So if anyone want to take Professor Murhaf, we can start with that. Who are the pawns and who are moving those pawns?
Let me put it differently. Who benefits and who loses?
Of course, you can start with that also.
And those who benefit, those who are benefiting are BRICS,
Not.
the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the G20, middle powers that use their leverage, resource-rich states that use their leverage, South-South cooperation, which is intensifying,
Yes.
digital platforms, which are sometimes more powerful than states. And those who are losing are the US, the EU. I don't want to say losing, that's too strong of a word, but certainly diminishing dominance. And the small, fragile states who have nowhere to go in all these games, and certainly global institutions such as the United Nations, the IMF, the World Bank, and international law altogether is losing, as the countries, perhaps led by China, and no doubt China is a very powerful country, have a shared grievance against Western dominance. And so it is this shared grievance and the emergence of these grievances onto not only US and EU dominance, but international institutions that is winning thus far.
Thank you. Professor Wang?
Okay. Thank you. Personal, I believe that the world, we are already entering a multipolar era, but as early stage, still at early stage. And generally, I think most emerging countries will benefit from this process because they have a more choice. Because they can play a bigger role in the global governance or regional governance, and they have a bigger say in the politics. I think it's not bad for them. For the China's, you mentioned about China, the role of that. I think China's policy, I think it's never changed because from 1970s, from 1980s, we always support the multipolar world. We believe it's not just for the purpose to, against the hegemony, something like that. I think this is also deeply rooted from China's history. Because in the Chinese philosophy, we believe that we can be different, but the harmony with difference is still very important. This is a very important Chinese philosophy in many ways. So for the Chinese elites, for the publics, it's difficult for them to adopt a kind of very confrontational philosophy, including in the international politics. I think it's a Chinese policy. We never change that. For the emerging countries, who will lose and who will get, I think it depends on the process of the transformation, and also depends on the policy they will adopt in this process.
Thank you. Yes, sure.
I do agree with Professor Murhaf on those who are the disadvantaged and the advantaged ones. We may call it the beneficiary and the disadvantaged. I want to add two others, very important disadvantaged parties in this environment, which is international collaborations. It's really, international collaboration nowadays is waning, and the spirit of international collaboration, and this is definitely not positive sign. International collaboration in pandemics, for example, international collaboration security issues, with the nuclear challenges, with cybersecurity, with terrorism activities, and also in the issues of environment. What it's supposed to be, even in the financial system and collaboration in the world, economically, we are not working together. So in this system, I think also international collaboration is actually disadvantaged and facing some problems. And the other thing is very important as well, facing a disadvantage in the current environment, is the Western valued order. I mean, Western valued order. The Western valued order that was based on the principle of rule of law, democracy, free markets, is no longer achieving credibility and achieving positive signs, unfortunately. And this is actually in the current international system. I think the Western rule-based order is finding a huge challenge to be appeals to the rest of the world.
Thank you, Mr. Jason.
I'm glad you said it the way you said it, and I share your great concern. And I also, about Professor Murhaf, sorry about this. When you were talking before about the importance of sort of social media being almost a separate power, a power maybe equal to the power of states. I remember a conversation that I had many years ago in Cairo with a gentleman who was telling me that in a competition between Qatar and Egypt, Qatar, because of Al Jazeera, has a greater population than Egypt because of the hundreds of millions of people who are watching their channel. I'm also very concerned, as Professor Mohamed was talking about, the weakening collaboration on environment, on pandemic. I remember a conversation that I had with Dr. Anwar Gargash before the Abraham Accords were signed. And this was a webinar that I conducted for AJC. and he was speaking about the necessity of pandemic cooperation between Israel and this country. Public health knows no borders, and yet that was the spirit 5 years ago. I'm afraid that that's not the spirit today. I share your concern, especially on the environment, but also on public health.
Okay, thank you. We have some, Professor, yes.
Professor Mohamed inspired me. And he talks about the disintegration of cooperation, really. Robert Cohen and Nye, two authors, wrote some time ago a classic, After Hegemony. They argued after hegemony, what happens when the hegemon collapses? What do nations do? And they argue that they cooperate because it is more cost efficient than not cooperating. And their thesis is flawed because they were looking only at Western norms and values, that the US would collapse, but there is Europe. Forget about the South. Well, now, if there is the disintegration of cooperation, it's because of the emergence of the South, who is now beginning to fight back.
Thank you. Professor Wang, before we move to you, I just want to remind our audience, just in case if someone wants to ask any question, you can just scan the barcode, the QR code, sorry. And they have two questions here. The first one is directed by the audience. Chinese leaders, and this is for you, Professor Wang, Chinese leaders and do not talk about multipolar Asia, but they always talk about multipolar world. So can we have a multipolar world without a multipolar Indo-Pacific region?
Thank you. It's a hard question, but I think it's multipolar world should include multipolar Asia. It's definitely. And India is also very important neighbors and also very important in the multipolar world. So in up to now, China, we don't have a very detailed pictures of the multipolar world. But definitely, I think the powers, big powers, major powers, and middle powers, including the Asian powers, and also including some regional cooperation platforms, including GCC and other countries, they will play a very important role. I think it's the same things. I don't think there is much difference of that.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question.
One thing, just a moment.
Sure.
Actually, I think China support, in the last several decades, we support the ASEAN, ASEAN, Asia-Europe meeting, and also ASEAN +3 play a very important role in the regional governance. I think it can be a kind of a sample for that.
Thank you for that. Another question, and this is for you all. In order to see a new international order, we have to witness a fundamental shift, like the World War II and or Berlin's wall collapse, like this kind of events. So, do you think that nowadays we need such an event to say that the world is starting to shift toward another phase or another system? So, Mr. Jason, Professor, yes.
Jason, sorry. You see, throughout the history,
Yes, it is.
the international system has changed in different ways.
What's that?
There is the peaceful way and the non-peaceful way. The peaceful ways in which change happens when the dominant powers accommodate the rising powers. So we saw this happening throughout history. And even with Britain in the 19th century and the 20th century when they accepted the United States rise of the United States. So this has happened peacefully, okay? So yes, it can happen peacefully, but that would require the dominant power to accept the rise of others and work with the rise of others. And the multinational corporations like the United Nations, the IMF and the World Bank and the others need to accommodate the changes in order to respect the rise of others and to give them a full credit for how they see things. Now, like what Professor Murhaf says, the only way the West is seeing, or the US seeing, is from the Western eye, but they don't see it from the other side. That's why alternative came from China with the BRICS and Shanghai, because they think that the Americans and the West are not looking at their own valued system of the South. That's why South and South cooperations are coming and gaining momentum, because the North does not want to accept the South. Now, if this goes like this, then we will be in trouble. So change, if it happens, it will happen not peaceful way. It will happen through conflict, like what happened in history. When U.S. did not tolerate Japan, they went into war. When the U.S. did not tolerate Germany, they went into war. Okay. When Sparta did not tolerate Athens, they went into war. But it is happening. It will happen. So it's up to the big powers in the international system today, particularly the United States, to decide to say, should I accommodate the others, or should I reject them and then escalate the tension to reach the picking points where we may collide into conflict?
Mr. Jason.
Yeah, I'm concerned that we're approaching the tipping point without the necessary leadership to bring us into a different international order. Look, you posed a very interesting question, a very profound question. Does it take a massive shock to the system to change people's thinking and change international politics? We had a pandemic, which should have brought the world together to seriously collaborate on public health issues. We did a little bit, but not so much anymore. And there is still suspicion about, where did the pandemic come from? It's still a hugely political, partisan issue even. Climate change, so clearly happening. Hundreds of scientists say this all the time, and yet there is division about whether the world is going to come together to tackle this in a very serious way.